let's get started. First of all, I want, on behalf of neighbors, I want to thank everyone who's here. Sounds like there's a lot of new people, and there's a lot of interest in learning what we do. And hopefully tonight we can answer your questions and get some ideas of how we can do things differently, or maybe how you can get involved. Three people will be basically, sort of your hosts. Myself, I'm the president of Neighbors, as I mentioned earlier. And we also have Jmel Wilson. You can wave to Jmel, tell people who you are. Jmel is our vice president of resettlement. So she basically heads up everything that goes on when we get a new family. So that's ranging volunteers to get furniture and helping them find an apartment and employment and getting kids to doctor's appointments and tutoring and all that stuff reports in under Jmel. And then we've got Ruth Gyure who's there, she got a couple roles. One of them is she's chair of what we call our grants committee. We have a couple different types of grants we give out, and she'll go into those more detail later. She also heads up all of our efforts on advocacy. Again, and she'll talk about that later. Advocacy is a big component of what we do. And so between the three of us, we should probably be able to answer all your questions. If we don't know an answer, we'll just make it up. No, if we can't find an answer tonight, we'll take a name, or we'll try to get back to you with it if we can. So it really is meant to be a Q&A later, but we want to just do a few slides before we get to that, so that we can sort of prime the pump and give you some information about us, and maybe they'll answer some of your questions. I do ask you to, if you have questions as we go along, just put them in the chat box, and then at the end we'll try to deal with all the questions at the end. So with that, we'll keep going. So I put together a slide that's just sort of NFR by the numbers. It really gives, we've been around for 4 years, so we go look at the milestones to start. We were formed in the end of 2016. We got our first refugee 2017. You'll hear from him a little bit later. We have a recording of a couple of our refugees, and you'll hear from them. We became a full-blown charity in 17. Then we had our first grants program, got launched in 2018. During that time, since 2017, we've sponsored 3 families, but we've also helped 8 other families to get resettled. We've helped we think we've helped about 2,000 refugees by this point. We've had over 100 volunteers involved in our efforts. And we have over 1,000 donors, between financial donors and giving furniture and filling out wish lists and all the rest. Financially, few numbers. We've we've raised over 300,000. We've given out tens of thousands of dollars of in-kind, and that means, like I said, furniture, diapers, stuff that people give us. And our fundraising goal for this year is pretty aggressive. It's 150,000. And we're about halfway there. And so at some point, I won't make a direct pitch more than what I'm doing right now, but at some point we'll probably ask you to help us meet our fundraising goal at some point during the year. We have 4 core programs. We have a lot of other things like we were talking about the MAS earlier. That's sort of a smaller program, but our 4 core programs are resettling. We fully resettle. Those are when we're the primary sponsor, and someone like Highest or Catholic Charities comes to us and says, do you want to take a family? And we say, yep. And then we're all in. We find the apartment. We provide them, all the financial help through the first 12 months. We give them furniture, clothing. We help find them employment, get the kids in school. It's a full commitment. And then we've been doing more partial settlements, sponsorships of late, where it's more of a financial and in-kind. We don't have all the other parts of it. And that's usually because these families have come in and don't have a full sponsor like we would. And so we're basically picking up part of the sponsorship with someone else, some other group. As I mentioned, Ruth's going to talk about grants. We call our Road to Independence grants and our insecurity grants. Ruth will talk about those a little bit. We also have a business incubator, and we've helped 2 or 3 refugees who have an entrepreneurial bent to them and they want to do their own business. We helped some guy become a messenger. We bought him a bicycle, electric bicycle. We also helped one of our refugees ramp up and really form her sewing, her seamstress business. And we're talking to a few other refugees as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also do advocacy. We also do education. We just ran something called In Her Words. One of the guests on tonight mentioned that it was something to deal with 6 refugee women who we told their stories of, what happened in their countries and their journey to America. It was very powerful and very exciting. There's ways. Someone mentioned you want to find out how you can help. This isn't very detailed, obviously. As I mentioned, you can donate. There's, we have a very aggressive funding need for this year because just so the need is out there. You can help us advocate. Ruth will talk about our ways that you can get involved in that. You can volunteer. You can help tutor. You can help us when we have to move furniture. There's just all these different ways that you can get hands-on. It can be at a distance. It's hands-on, but at a distance. And a real important part is getting educated. Sivs used to say our best customers is an educated consumer. The best part and the best way that you can help out refugees is for you yourselves to get educated about what's happening so that you can then pass that knowledge on and try to get rid of all the misinformation that's out there, it's just rampant, and it really affects negatively refugees and what our country, how we react to them. In terms of some numbers, in 2020, there's about 80 million people displaced around the world. Of that, about half of that's in their own country. They're displaced in their own country, and about half they've had to leave their own country. There are 34 million refugees out there and Asylees. Last year, we admitted less than 15,000. I think it was probably closer. I think it was like 7,000 or 8,000. So far in the year. Only about 1,000 of those get to New York. And then of those, on average, we probably get less than 30 a year here in Westchester. And so a lot of what we do is not just Westchester, not just Larchmont and Mamaroneck. Our work is really in the tri-state area. New Jersey, Connecticut, New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York. We've helped as far afield as Rochester, New Haven, Jersey City. And so that's our sort of area where we get involved in. What happens in terms of the sort of typical path for a refugee is that there's this vetting period before they get here. It can last anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Someone who's a refugee applies to the UN High Commission for Refugee, and then after that, they're vetted incredibly thoroughly by the Department of Defense, DEA, Interpol, State Department. They have to go through all kinds of medical exams to make sure they're healthy to come here. Once they arrive, we get involved. We don't even know who they are usually until they show up at the airport. We had one family we were told they had two boys and a girl, and they had 4 boys. So we were a little surprised, and we had to do some scrambling with their apartment. But so once they're here, we help them, as we said, find their housing and employment and all their stuff. And that's really a really heavy duty, tense period for us, particularly the first couple months after they're here. And then after that 12-month period, that's sort of our commitment. We still help them. We give them grants, we continue tutoring, we have the business incubator, we provide friendship counseling, and we keep going on that. So what I'd like to do is turn this over now. I think Jmel is going to be speaking mostly about what happens during that middle blue period when we are the sponsor. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Frank. Well, the excitement really begins when we get that call from the agency. In this case, the last 2 families for us has been from Hyas saying, we have a family for you, and they give us the basic information, the number of people in the family, the ages, educational background, languages, and if there are any outstanding medical issues that will need to be addressed. And we usually have 24 hours to tell them whether or not we can accept that family to resettle. And except for one instance, our answer has always been yes. In that particular instance, it was not the right time for us as an organization, and the makeup of the family wasn't what we felt like we were best suited to do. But every other time we've been offered a family, we've been able to say yes. So we've had as little as 2 weeks to get ready. And I think the most we ever had to get ready was 4 weeks. That means finding an apartment. And as you know, housing in Westchester doesn't come cheap. So we not only need to find a place that is affordable, but it needs to be in a safe neighborhood. And there are some requirements from HIAS that it be near public transportation, that it be in walking distance to a grocery store. And so that's a big challenge. Thankfully, we have found one landlord who's friendly to us, and we've got 2 of our families in one of his building now. And then we've got to get everything a family needs to start life in a new apartment: the furniture, the linens, down to salt and pepper in the kitchen, stocking the cupboards, preparing orientation materials so that when we're not there, those first few days, that they can look at the orientation material and remember where the bus stop is, or what they're supposed to do to use in a laundromat, to use the washing machine. Everything that a family would need is there in the apartment when they arrive. So that is a busy time for us and an exciting time as we're getting ready and looking forward to meeting the family. And then arrival day comes, and we send our airport team to JFK to meet the family, and they're brought home. You might find this interesting. We usually send 2 vehicles, one for the people and one for all the luggage. There have been some amazing amounts of luggage we see coming through that door. We welcome them to their new home. We have a hot meal ready for them that is their own culture's meal. And we have a wonderful tradition in Westchester that the last family in prepares the welcome meal for the new family. And right away, it connects them with their new friends and their new community. We show them around. We show them how to work the locks and the doorbell and the stove and the basics. And then we leave them to sleep, and we come back the next day. And that first couple of weeks is very full of appointments. We are taking them to the grocery store for the first time, buying clothes a lot. If they come in winter, they don't normally have the winter clothing that they need: coats, boots, etc. There are multiple medical visits to take them to, everything they need to know to get started. So we're with them pretty much every day those first few weeks. And after all the medical visits are done, then we can get the kids registered in school and get them started and get the adults going with ESL classes. That first month is a whirl of activity. I think that their heads must be spinning. So one of the things that we have learned over the last few years is that any conversation we have with them, if we've had it those first few weeks, there's not much of a chance that it's really going to stick. And so we need to be prepared to have those conversations multiple times, conversations about family budgets, how things work here, what their expectations can be of us. We need to keep having that conversation through the months. And then once we get past that first month, we can start looking forward to helping the wage earner find a job, prepping the resume, looking for jobs, interviewing, prepping for job interviews. And then that's kind of a tricky period in that second month because the goal is for the wage earner to be employed by the third month. And I think it's a tense period for the family because until the job is there, they don't feel very settled. They know that we are committed to them for the year and that they're never going to go hungry and they're going to have a roof over their head and they're going to have everything they need. But the wage earners are really eager to get to work. And once that job is secured, I have seen them all kind of have a sigh of relief because then things feel more settled for them and they can really start adjusting to life in America. I would say the first month is probably the most challenging for them, and then the end of that calendar year when we start doing transition planning, talking about month 13, because our commitment to them is for 1 year. So we have to do some planning with them for how they're going to be fully self-supporting. Not that we're going to disappear on them. We're still going to be available to them for friendship and for counsel. But essentially, the goal is for them to be self-sustaining at that point. So that's what it's like in the first year, settling a family. I think that Ruth is going to take us now and tell us about what goes on with the families once they've been here longer than a year. And Ruth, you're on mute.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. And yes, I want to talk to you a little bit about the committees and projects that I've been involved with and I'm very excited about, and things you can get involved with very easily. So we do grants. Frank already mentioned that. And I'm very involved with the Road to Independence Fund. And yes, this is for refugees, asylum seekers, those who don't have right now a current family or group that's resettling them or supporting them right now. So this would be after that 13th month period and beyond. And they have something that's going to help move them forward, some emergency monetary need, maybe that month lapse in rent because they want to relocate. So those are mainly the people that this grant is intended for. Who can apply though are any sort of group that is overseeing them, because we do want them to be recommended by an agency or a small group, or a group like ours, another parallel group like ours, who knows them and in a sense will vouch for them in their situation. And the purpose is moving forward. This isn't just give them money for something they need right now, groceries this week. This is for something like licensing fees or training fees or taking an English lessons or taking driving lessons, something they need in order to get a job or to make sure that they will be able to get a job. So we found there's a whole variety of needs, and I know you'll have questions about that I can answer later. Typically, we give grants between $300 to $800. So that range is pretty much covers most of the grants that we've given, but we go up to $1,500, and mostly at that range, we're talking about emergency rent, 1 month emergency rent. So we will do that. And how much is typically given, I just explained that. How many people have we helped? Well, here are some of the groups that have recommended or made applications for their clients or the people that they've been helping themselves. And we like to help out smaller groups that don't have a large cash flow, because they can't always provide for the monetary needs of the people that they're helping with either shelter or legal services, etc. So we've so far, in these 4 years of doing our grants, have given away over $50,000. And these are small grants, so it's a lot of people, more than 200 individuals and families, and even sometimes money directly to the shelter if they have a program, they need Spanish language, Spanish English dictionaries, for example, or they need something in the shelter that's going to help everyone that's there. So another way we help in that I like showing these photos. I could see Jmel smiling. Everybody remembers these. So one of our biggest collections, and we collect goods and gift cards and things, and also donations from Amazon wish lists for things we know that refugees need. And one of our first collections was actually for refugees from Syria, and they were sent to a refugee camp just north of Syria through another organization that specializes in getting things there. And it was huge. It was quite large. It was about a 4-day event. Sorry. Oops. Ooh. What am I doing? There. Hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of bags of clothing and bedding. And these were nice items. These were very gently used, some new, from generous donors in our area and beyond. Medical supplies, wheelchairs, canes, walkers. There were bicycles, there were strollers, baby supplies, anything you can think of that families might need. From our wish list, diapers, food, dry goods, and baby formula. Lots and lots of things that came from Amazon, and dozens of very, very hardworking volunteers who made this happen at St. John's Church in Larchmont, who were very, very generous to us. And all of it ended up in 2 enormous trucks that went on to be loaded onto a shipping container, onto a ship that went abroad. So we're very, very proud of that effort. And, see, the Larchmont Village Fire Department helped us out because it was a lot of physical labor. So now we don't do that every year. That was a big thing. And now we're focusing on winter clothing for our refugees. So coats and boots is our thing now every fall. And last year was the first time we had to deal with COVID, and we managed it with safety and distancing and all of that. And we were very, very fortunate with the weather. So we could move outside, spread out, and deal with the massive amount of generous donations that we received and had to sort and label and size. And they're the boots alone, just part of them. They went around the corner and pack them nicely into bags and boxes that were labeled for particular families who gave us wish lists of sizes for each of their children and themselves. So we worked very, very hard on this to make sure that these people got a nice items of clothing and boots that they needed, because they are out trudging around in snow and sleet and things they never expected to deal with here. Advocacy, Frank said, is really important to us. And we try to write a lot of postcards because postcards really matter to legislators. And Elaine and I came up with the Third Thursdays event, third Thursday of every month. We would write postcards and have the public engaged with that. Starting out at a bookstore, local bookstore, Anderson's, hosted us generously. And then COVID came along. So now it's a virtual event right now. Hopefully in the future we'll meet again, but you can write postcards. If you register for this event, you'll get the issue that we work on this month, ways to help. You can call, you can email, you can tweet, or you can write postcards and you'll get an address for postcard pickup. So register when you see it each month. You'll have something important to do for refugees. And the next date is April 15th. So if you just email me or go to our website or our Facebook pages, you'll find the links and sign up, and you'll get everything that you need. And just to add on here, we postcard at events, we do tabling, we will give talks, we have speakers. And when we host an event or we go to an event, we have our postcards out and we can talk to people, and we'll do, maybe sometimes we do a giving tree to buy things for people or donate things that they need, that we know refugees. And these are, our new collections are mostly focused on local refugees, as Frank said, from New Jersey to New Haven and Upper Westchester. So we can use all the help we can get, and we welcome you. Thanks for coming tonight. And I know Frank's going to finish us up.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot. Before we get into the Q&A period, we're going to listen to a couple of our refugees. As I mentioned earlier, we put on a play called Inner Words about 6 women's journeys to the U.S. As part of that, we had a couple of our refugees record some comments, and we're going to play those for us. Again, but before I do, just want to point out, if you have comments, you can put them, or questions, put them in the chat, and then we'll go through the ones that are there, and then it will open up and people can just ask their questions as we go along. So let me see if I can get the first of our 2 refugees on the screen here. So this is Bilal. He was our first refugee that we helped. He was the one who came back on March 6th of 2017.
Idea about the United States when I came
Oh, wait a minute, I haven't shared
very
though.
confused because no family, no parents,
Can you hear
no
that?
one here.
Yeah.
I thought who is helping me like that. So when I came here, I meet the people. So it's very kindful people and very helpful. Then I'm thinking that's good for me, and life also secure for me here. So I can do something for my family and for my future. So I hope it's grateful for me. I have a future and planning, and my dream is save my parents' life, do something for my parents and my family, and mostly I want to help poor people. That is my dream. My name is Jmel.
Okay, Rick is going to have one from another one of our refugees, Nabila, who is the wife of the person you just saw there at the end.
Oops.
We're not hearing.
Okay, hold on.
As you can tell, we're not professional Zoom hosts.
Right. All right. What the hell? No.
We're not professionals, but we do hope we're influencers.
This is embarrassing. Oh, here we go.
But unfortunately, she'll be off the camera, so you won't see the face, but you will hear the voice.
Hi, I'm Nabila. A neighbor for refugee help us in all areas of our life. They provided financial support and all other necessary things that we needed. They helped me with my English and provided in-person and online classes. They are still teaching me. The volunteers from a neighbor for refugee also practiced driving with me, and I recently got my driving lessons and helped me in taking care of my sons. Making masks is a great activity organized by a neighbor for refugees, and I'm very happy that I'm a part of this. I feel very proud when I see that the masks that I'm making are used by doctors and nurses who are saving people's lives. Saving masks is a good business and a source of income for us. but most importantly, the spiritual importance of saving masks is meaningful for me, because I help people in the pandemic time.
Hello.
Great. Okay. At this point, I think we'll open it up again. If you have any questions, you can send them to the chat. Elaine was looking at them, and I don't know if you can read some of them off, or if there's some questions we want to go to. So
Sure. I'm going to go to Frank on slide. We have a slide 10. At one point we did. What are the differences between refugees, asylees, SIVs, and immigrants?
okay, let me see if I can pull that up. I do have a slide that I think can help show that differential. Just a second. Okay, shoot. This is not clever. So okay, so yeah, that's a good question. We get that a lot. So refugees, SIVs, and asylees, they're all people who are basically the difference between them and just an immigrant is that immigrants voluntarily leave where they want where they were living, and they voluntarily want to come here. These others are basically forced to leave their homes, and go somewhere else because they're persecuted. They fear for their lives, and all of them are here legally. They're all at some point formally approved to be in the United States. They're allowed to be here. And basically all they want is, what we all want, a life of safety, opportunity, a place to raise their families and all the rest. A refugee really can be anywhere in the world. They basically are outside their home country, and they come here from outside their home country. An asylee is basically the equivalent of a refugee, but they tend to be from inside their country. I mean, obviously someone from Honduras isn't going directly from Honduras here, but they're only going through those other countries on their way here. The refugees have been forced out of their country and are living abroad, and then trying to get and applying from those other countries to get here. Asylees basically get here and then ask for asylum most of the time. They can ask for it from their home countries, but they can. And then an SIV is a special form of refugee, and that stands for special immigrant visa, and it goes to people who are coming here from Iraq and Afghanistan. And to be an SIV, you meant that you were helping us or our allies in those countries. Two of our refugee families are SIV families. One worked with the US military and logistics and on their bases, and the other one worked for the US, actually the US Drug Enforcement Agency. And you can imagine, as we're pulling down our troops in Afghanistan, these people are very fearful for their lives, that there will be retaliation. And so there's a special program just for those people to help get them out of harm's way.
Okay, another question for you, Frank, if you wouldn't mind. What are NFR's biggest challenges?
Our biggest challenge for resettling refugees is affordable housing. And second one after that is employment, trying to find employment. We can find employment. It's finding employment that they can afford to live on. Westchester is a pretty expensive place to live. It's a couple $1,000s a month or more for a family. And we do sometimes talk about moving refugees from here to other parts of the country, but we find that housing may be a little bit cheaper, but it's not cheaper enough to offset drop in salaries or just enough to make it. So really housing for us is a big challenge. We actually have a group that's trying to get together and see if we can come up with some longer term solutions for the housing.
Thank you. And Jmel, how about this for you, and maybe Ruth towards the end of it, but what are the refugees' biggest challenges?
I do think the insecurity that comes from not having a job at first, and even when they do get a job, it's often just barely enough at that to make ends meet, and that's that creates a lot of anxiety for the adults in the family. And I think also, I know this is true. I'm thinking of some of the women who feel, you know, they're probably not going to see their families again unless something amazing happens and the families are able to be brought over. I'm thinking of one woman whose father died and she couldn't get over there to say goodbye, and that sense of being cut off from your family, I think, is very difficult. And it's one of the things that we kind of keep an eye on, is that isolation and depression, and that can be really difficult for that first year.
Great. Here's a question. Where are most of your refugees from? Jmel, do you want to take that one?
Well, let's see. We had one from Pakistan, and then we have done full resettlement for 2 Afghan families, partial resettlement for another Afghan family, and then all the other partial resettlement families, I believe, are Syrian. Is that right, Frank? I think that's
Well, and if you count like Anna, they were from El Salvador.
well, that's true. We've got,
And-
that's true. Lately,
and
we've had,
lately we did El Salvador. We had another one from a single woman from Iran we're helping.
right.
So it's pretty spread out. I think when we first got started, we were thinking we would be Syrian only. And
Yeah.
we've gotten probably fewer Syrians than everybody else.
Yeah.
So I wanted to remind people that, one, you could either unmute and ask your question directly, or type your question in the chat box. And in the meantime, here's another question. Ruth, what kinds of things do people ask for when they apply for grants?
Well, there's quite a range, but a lot of the grants that we approve have been for, as I said, training or lessons, driving, etc. We've given cookware or tools to refugees. When he was a carpenter and he wanted to work at home, one was he wanted to be a mechanic and he was able to get an apprenticeship but needed the tools that you have to do that. So we helped him with that. When we had the request for an electric bicycle, it was a young man who had actually started a business which wasn't thriving, but the bicycle was going to help. And he went to we recommended him to the business incubator program. And that was very successful because it did help him. And he has been able to pay off this loan a little bit at a time. And that's a nice model that we would like, because if we make an investment and it give everyone a return. But a lot of it is housing, medical needs, relocation. A lot of the families relocate out of this area because there are jobs and housing more available to them in other parts of the country. And we support that because we know how challenging it is to live in the Northeast here. So we support that. We may help them move. There's sometimes their medical expenses aren't all fully covered because many of them are on Medicaid. And so we help them with some medications. So those are the main things that we do. Lots of emergencies and also trainings and programs to help them move forward.
If I could, most of what we've talked about on the grants has been our Road to Independence grants. We also last year we started something that we call our COVID relief grants.
Yep.
That's morphed into our insecurity grants, because it's not just COVID that refugees, has put refugees. And that one was really, we were giving out $200 to $500 per family grants. And that program, we probably gave out, helped hundreds of families, people as well. And someone mentioned something about, it's not a lot of money. It's $200, $500 doesn't seem, but for these families, that's a huge amount of money for them. And it helps them put food on the table or help them with their medicine or whatever else. And we gave money to, we worked through a partnership with Elena's Light up in Connecticut. And we gave them a $3,000 a total grants to like 10 or 15 of their clients. And one of their clients said, you know, it's not the money, it's the fact that someone cares, that someone remembers us and we're not forgotten, that someone is actually willing to help us. And so the money is important, but like I said earlier about the mask making, it's not always about the money. It's us being there to provide support, counsel, and even the little money we give just means that they realize that there's someone in America, you know, they hear all this stuff on TV about, you know, the migrants and the caravans are coming to invade us and these people are murderers and rapists and they hear that, and just to be understood and to have someone come along and help them is incredibly important and powerful for them. So I don't want to overlook that part of what we do.
Just to add to that, when one of these refugees or families comes on our radar through an application, even if we can't fund it, we know about them now and we can find some way to help them, maybe in other ways. Maybe as we did with one, we could get a wish list to get some furniture for his new apartment so that he could actually live in it. And we can get things going for them, maybe find some assistance for them in other ways. So yes, they know that this is a one-on-one connection we actually make with people. It's not just giving away money.
Yeah. So Ruth, there's another question I think maybe you could answer, and that is, are there specific parts of the country people are moving to?
Yeah, Pennsylvania and Ohio are destinations for some of the families. Also Minnesota, interestingly. So they're just sort of some urban hubs where there are a lot of jobs available, and there are already maybe Syrian or Afghan families. They'll even move to New Jersey also, because there may be more opportunities with industry in New Jersey. Or interestingly, a lot of families choose the wage earner will drive Uber, and that gives them more mobility. So they'll simply move to a place that the rent is cheaper. We had one family who joined the lottery. Well, these were families we were helping, these aren't all our resettled families. These are just families that we help, that we come across through their need. And they started out in New Haven. It was still expensive, but they got into the rent lottery in Maine. And they got an incredible place to live in Maine at very, very low rent. So they could do the same thing they were doing in New Haven, but with much, much cheaper rent in Maine.
Somehow the lottery helped them with their rent or
yes,
subsidize them, or?
It was a state.
Affordable housing lotteries are in most states. So you have to you have to be in it to win it. And so Mark helped them apply to several states, and they got in Maine.
Great.
I mean, one of the things just how people end up where they do, it's something I didn't mention, is that refugees, when they finally get approved, they are given to 9 organizations around the country. HIAS, Catholic Charities, the International Rescue Committee. There's 9 of them. And those 9 then sort of decide, they split up the group of refugees that they get every week, and they send around the country. And there's a couple things that determine where they go. One is if there's a community there that they can be connected to. Do they have family? Or is it just someplace where someone wants to live? And so even though Westchester is kind of expensive, there are reasons why people want to come here. They have family. They have other opportunities. There's just reasons why they want to be Westchester, and so we're here to support them here. And if it turns out that Westchester was a mistake and they can't afford it, we'll help them go someplace where we are. We're not going to try to hold on to them just because they're our refugees. But they do get here, and it's not our choice that they come here, and we're just here to receive them. So
There are no more questions that I see in the chat, but if anybody would like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself, or this might be towards the end of our.
I had a quick question.
Great.
I think earlier, towards the beginning of the call, someone mentioned that the quota or the number of refugees allowed into the country is increasing now. So I was wondering if that meant that you guys expected more and more families to probably start entering the program in the next few years.
Yeah, what's happened is that under Obama, the number of refugees, the cap on refugees was set at 100 and something thousand, and they never really got to the full cap, but they were bringing in 80, 90,000 across the U.S. The last year of the Trump administration, he dropped the cap to 15,000 and really was targeting, I think, something like 7,000 or 8,000 for the year. And the year ends coming October. The new administration, President Biden, has said he's pushing that number back up to 125. He's trying to get it up to 62.5, half of the annual for the rest of this year. The problem is that a lot of the infrastructure to bring people in has been kind of dismantled over the last 4 years. So it will take a while for it to come up. But once it's up and running, all these organizations want to rebuild their refugee programs. And so we're expecting to possibly see some new refugee families coming in and possibly get a sponsorship of one later this year. And then after that, starting to see them come, maybe we'll get 1 or 2 a year going forward. That would be something.
I would like to add that, yes, Biden would like to raise the number of refugees, and he's changed the categories to be in the countries and the places where people are most in need of coming here, but he hasn't signed it yet. It's called the presidential determination. As of now, we're still under the Trump presidential determination until October. So until Biden signs it, we're not going to get a new influx of refugees. So that was our action for this month, to write and put some pressure on our legislators about. So you can still participate in that and contact your legislators about it. And I've got other addresses to call or write. So please help. That's what advocacy is all about, letting them know, here we are, we're ready to resettle refugees. Why can't they get on those planes? Why aren't they coming? They've been vetted. So we're ready to receive them. So this is an important part of advocacy.
Ruth, I have a question for you. It's a silly question, I'm sure, but so if October is the date for the new cap on refugees, is there a rush for having the president sign the new?
Because if he signs it today, they can get on the planes and be here this summer. It's called an emergency. He's going to sign an emergency presidential determination, which would change it until October.
Okay.
And then
the way the law works, I believe, is that the Refugee Act from back in the 80s, every year the president puts out a determination of how many refugees the U.S. will accept. And the idea is that it was to give the president leeway to have the numbers go up and down in response to the need. So every year the president says, my determination is we'll do X, or actually the determination is we'll take up to X. And that's what Trump did in the last year. It says, my determination is we're only going to take 15,000 at most. Okay, and we're still under that. So if Biden came out tomorrow and said, I'm going to overrule basically that determination and do an emergency one, I'm going to put it up to 60,000.
Yeah.
That starts the whole processing and the government to start letting people in quicker, and we can get them here. If he doesn't do anything until October, it's going to take months and after that for that to really have an impact. So the sooner he gets that going, the better. And so, as Ruth said, is if a few people are interested in, contact Ruth. She can give you the information about how to advocate for that and try to get put some pressure to get him to sign that.
I have a question.
Mhm.
The people that are down on the southern border, they're coming in, they're not vetted. You can't deal with them because they're not vetted? Is that,
No, they're asylees and we help asylees. It's just that they're harder for us to help. We have given some financial help and we're given some other help to people along the border. Once they get accepted, some of the people that we've helped this year on our partial resettlement have been asylees. So people who've come in from the southern border.
at the border, is there any, can they get vetted if they just coming across the border? How do they get in touch with the people to get them vetted so they can be helped and allowed to stay?
Well, what happens is they usually have to prove that they were being persecuted, or they have a fear of living there, and they go before a judge, and the judge can say, yes, you will be admitted. It's a different vetting process, but there still is an adjudication process for them to get officially approved to live here in the U.S.
And those people you can help, you can settle them.
Yeah. Well, once you're asylee, once you're sort of in the country, you are basically the equivalent of a refugee. I mean, it's a legal distinction, but we don't really pay attention to that. We use the word refugee in a much broader, non-legalistic term.
Well, the people coming across the southern border is a little bit of a different situation than the thousands of people who have gone through the INCH out of Syria or Jordan or waiting in refugee camps in Turkey or Greece or other countries. They have gone through this system of vetting to be official refugees. They're fleeing from war, they're fleeing from turmoil, they're fleeing from conditions of abject horror. From the southern border, everything is much more complicated, as you know, and many are immigrants. They're coming for a better life. We can't judge whether they're going to be able to claim refugee status or asylee status. We don't know that until they come across and they apply through an official border checkpoint. If they come through any other way, they're not in the system in any way yet. So, but if they do come in and if there is some case for them to claim asylum, but usually if you're coming in as a refugee, you have applied for that status even before you cross our border. So that it's just a really complicated situation at the southern border, but we definitely get refugees from South America and Central America entering this country. And the new President Biden's new determination will include thousands of individuals from the most troubled countries in South America who have every right to say they're refugees. So he's including that. Okay. It doesn't mean everyone who's trying to come in will be in that status.
I wonder why he hasn't signed it. And I wonder if it's because the situation, the whole immigration situation is in such disarray from Trump. I don't get the sense that he wouldn't sign it if he could, or if
we can speculate, but nobody knows.
Right.
So,
a question. Do these people automatically get a green card when they're brought in through? How do they get jobs if they don't have a green card? The people who are coming in that are vetted, that are approved to come.
So they have legal status to work. Okay. And at the end of a year here, they apply for a green card. Okay. But they have their work permit and they are absolutely legal. And there's everything, they have every right to be here, every right to be here. And one difference is that with SIVs, and you remember what an SIV is? They actually have a green card as soon as they step on US soil. Yep. That's one of the privileges that's afforded to them because they put their lives and the lives of their families on the line for our country.
One of the things that we didn't talk about when, on the day of arrival is basically they get off the plane and they are whisked into immigration and they start filling out the paperwork before they even leave the airport. They fill out this I-9 form. They've applied for their work permit. And then shortly thereafter, one of the things that we do is we take them to the Social Security part so they get their applying for their Social Security numbers. And so that first day to first 3 or 4 weeks, a lot of the stuff that we help them with and the resettlement agencies help them with is just getting all that paperwork so they're legally here, they can stay here, they can work, they can go to school, and all that stuff is part of that process.
And a lot of these people who have fled don't have their birth certificates or marriage certificates. So they're helped with all that documentation of.
Usually over there, that's part of the vetting process that allows us to happen through the Interpol and Department of Defense and DEA and FBI, all that stuff. All that vetting happens while they're sitting in the camps over in Syria or Turkey.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know, it's very thorough. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So just to clarify for people in a pretty simple way, we only resettle refugees who have gone through this whole process and are coming to us through HIAS or Catholic Charities. So there's a whole system in place for us of what we need to do, and they have a lot of things already in place, and we start helping them move through that. Those are the people we resettle. We choose to assist others who are coming to us for other reasons through other groups and agencies who are here as asylum seekers. And they may have a work permit. They're in the asylum seeking system. They are legally allowed to be here as they start to go through that. And so we just help them, not legally, but we help them with some of their needs. So we help refugees who don't have anyone helping them anymore. Because some who come through IRC, they don't get a help for a whole year, the same way that that we would help them. So they're on their own pretty early on. And that's what makes these refugees a little bit at a loss sometimes, and they can go adrift. Some of them, we sometimes expect them all to come here, all gung-ho and ready to start their new life in America, but they come with trauma, poor English skills, maybe not a lot of good job skills, and many, many, many just go off running. Many suffer and struggle. So our group just chooses to help some that we come across. They come into our path.
May I ask a quick question to follow that? If any of the refugees require additional mental health support or support navigating the legal system, are there either mental health therapists that are available or pro bono lawyers that are accessible to them through HIAS and the other agencies, or how do they get connected to that other level of support?
Yes, HIAS has the connections that they need for those particular kinds of help. And I would say that HIAS does an exceptional job of staying on top of that. And for the families who are lucky enough to have HIAS resettle them, they're working with real professionals, and the caseworkers really work very closely with them to make sure that they're doing okay.
I would say Catholic Charities has a pretty good infrastructure.
That's true. We only resettled the one family, initially through Catholic Charities. We have more experience with HIAS, and I hope we get to settle a lot more with Catholic Charities. Hopefully they'll be resettling back in Westchester again.
Okay.
She brings up an important point, though, is that we're always on the lookout for pro bono assistance because even for doctors or dentists, we've had to seek out those who would be kind enough to give somebody, even one of our resettled gentlemen had tooth problems they could not possibly afford through Medicaid, and there was a dentist kind enough to see him and help him and diagnose him. And we always look for people who are willing to do that sort of thing for these individuals. And that includes mental health. So many of you are volunteers. You can help by offering the things you're good at, your services. What are you good at doing that you can help our group out with? And it could be as a professional in the medical health field, or it could be in accounting, or it could be in media services or advertising. You know, what is your skill? Because I guarantee you, we could probably find a way to use it.
It's,
We have one question from Hamza. If I
Hey,
pronounce your name.
yeah, I just wanted to say thank you guys for the work you're doing. It's really cool to see the resettlements and everything that you guys have accomplished so far. And I'm really excited for what's to come. I was curious about the people who are sewing. So like I said earlier, I go to school for clothing design. And one of the things I've been doing is going into factories in New York City. So clothing factories in New York City in the garment district, you walk into these places and a lot of times the people that are working or the seamstresses, they're immigrants. They're coming from a place where they were working as seamstresses in other countries and they came here and they found a job as a seamstress. So I was wondering, do any of the women who are sewing PPE, do they have a background in that from the places that they're coming from? Or maybe just in general, are the families or any of the people that you're coming across, do they have that background at all? Is that like a potential employment opportunity for people?
One of the women who makes masks used to do, she worked for Nordstrom's doing alterations, and she was a seamstress back in Afghanistan. So there are a couple of the mask making ladies who were professionals before they came here, and so they're especially helpful in the group when they're coming up with new patterns and that sort of thing. It's most of the women are extremely grateful to be able to work from home. That's one of the big pluses of this kind of work for them. We make sure they have good machines and they can work from home, and that way childcare is not an issue. And for most of them, working from home is much more comfortable culturally than going out into a workplace where they're going to be mixing with, you know, all kinds of people that they wouldn't normally be comfortable with.
But we have to mention Amina, because Amina is started out, you know, with small projects with us, and she was supported by our business incubator program. And Amina now has a thriving business in alterations, and they've found her niche can be working for a business that needs a lot of one particular item, and she has done very, very well. So that's one of the things we can help with. We can help if somebody is industrious and wants to move forward. We are here to support them.
We're looking to see whether or not we can move these, some of the people are making masks into making like pouch-like tote bags and sell those at like farmers markets. We're selling masks in a number of stores or restaurants around town, and they'll sell those things there too. So they're trying to come up with things like we said earlier that, you know, demand for the masks. Their masks are, most of the masks they've made, we've actually donated. They don't sell them. We basically pay them per mask. We're trying to give them basically $15 an hour, and so they can make, you know, 6 masks an hour. But the masks they have made and the ones that they made on their own without being paid for, we've given them to frontline people, but we've also given them to homeless people. We've donated them in places for schools. And then we've sent some recently to some Native American reservations out west, because they have a need for them. This virus has really hit reservations pretty hard. And so we've been providing some masks for that situation as well.
Fantastic.
That's super interesting. And so I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier. Do the women that have that industrious background, who know the pattern making, who have experience sewing, are they usually the ones teaching the women who don't know how to sew how the entire process works?
They're kind of the leaders.
Yeah, we had the man that someone mentioned earlier. He never knew how to use a sewing machine. And so we gave him a sewing machine, and he actually was trained how to make masks. So the first few were pretty iffy, but he got pretty proficient after a while. So
Hamza, you sound like you may have some ideas cooking
Yeah.
in there for us.
Yeah, I was actually, I don't know if I think you guys have worked with PPE for All.
Yes.
yes, we work with them, PPE for, yep.
Yeah.
They work with the Poughkeepsie Underwear Factory and the Hudson River Housing Program. They do a lot of stuff closer to Poughkeepsie. I was teaching a sewing class to just anyone who wanted to teach. I was teaching it at the Poughkeepsie Underwear Factory for a few weeks. So I was just curious because I was looking to get involved and kind of see if my knowledge of sewing or apparel design could be used in any way to.
Well, I think what we need to do is get you in touch with Ellen and Will. We have your email. They head up our business incubator, and maybe there's a germ of an idea there for business for some of these women that we could put together some kind of sewing cooperative for them. And maybe you could help us with that. So
Hamza, you belong to us now. You are now an NFR member, and we have your email, and we are looking forward to what we're going to do together.
we know where you live online.
May I chime in also? I apologize that I'm dialing in by phone. I'm just commuting home, but this is Leah Katz-Nelson, and I work as a costume designer in film and television. So this appeal and of kind of teaming up together in some way from the incubator standpoint with these women and sewing and opportunity is something I'd love to get involved with as well. So
that's
just
great.
my name in the hat.
Your timing is perfect. Wow.
I also may have a sewing machine I could donate.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
So do we have your email address?
I believe you already have it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Rick is giving me the thumbs up saying we do. Okay, so we know where you live too.
We'll be in touch.
The other piece I wanted to mention, which was a question really, is in my other life, I also work as a birth doula and lactation consultant. And if these women who are coming to the country require, I know that there's support navigating the medical system, but I'd also be happy to offer insight into how birth works in this area and if they need support in that regard.
That's great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And if none of you have done it before, we also have you visit our website. There's a survey that you can go on, a volunteer survey, and you can just go in and say, oh, these are the things I'm interested in or not.
Fabulous.
Any other questions?
Great questions, everyone. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, hearing none, why don't we, someone's just wanting to come in and we're about to say we're done. Why don't we call it, if there aren't any other questions, then maybe we could say a good evening. And on behalf of neighbor, Ruth and Jmel and Elaine and Rick and others from neighbors who are on the call with us, thank you all for joining us. And it's been great. I hope you've learned something and know a little bit more about us. So thank you.
You'll get a follow-up email.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the email
Good
chain.
to be with you. Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Very much.